The beautiful and seductive Valenya is the very portrait of feminine strength in its purest form, where sensuality and brutality coexist, a warrior whose presence inspires loyalty, desire, and fear in equal measure. And as the world marches toward the brink of chaos, only her blade can decide whether men will kneel before the gods or if the gods will fall before a woman. The beautiful Valenya, known as the warrior lioness, was born under omens that foretold a destiny marked by pain and poverty. Her mother did not survive childbirth, and her first breath came accompanied by the funeral silence that enveloped the clan. Her father, an exiled warrior rejected by his own people, found himself burdened with the responsibility of shaping that child amid the ashes of shame and banishment. For him, survival was not a choice, but a sentence, and so he passed on to his daughter the same hardness carved into his bones and spirit. From an early age, Valenya was surrounded by the biting cold of snow and the icy gleam of steel. While other children discovered games and innocence, she was learning to raise a blade, to endure the weight of a shield, and to bear hunger without tears. Her body was disciplined, as if it were a fortress in constant construction. Each sculpted muscle trained, each scar etched, each fall transformed into a lesson. To her father, fragility was an insult, and the young girl grew up understanding that only relentless will could lift someone above disgrace. Her childhood was no field of sweet memories. The beautiful girl learned that the heat of forged steel demanded patience and resilience, and that snow punished only those who lacked the courage to face it. Under such conditions, she grew as a fortress of flesh and blood, rising before life as if she were made of the very essence of the storm. When Valenya reached adulthood, her presence became impossible to ignore. The vigor of her body, forged by years of discipline and struggle, blazed like a living flame amid the ice of her homeland. Her beauty, marked by wild and untamable features, was not the fragile delicacy so many worshipped, but the imposing aura of one who carries the storm in her eyes. Warriors from distant lands followed her, some drawn by devotion, others consumed by desire, but nearly all succumbed to the weight of her strength and the intensity of her spirit. There was no simple balance between reverence and fear, for in her presence, the two became indistinguishable. Behind each of her movements lay a mystery greater than the swords she wielded. The beautiful Valenya was seen as a leader, yet also as an enigma. It was said that the fate of men and gods rested upon her existence. When the ice bled and the gods fell, only the daughter of the storm would be able to uphold the balance of the world. These words, carved into ancient runes and echoed by shamans, hung like a burden upon her shoulders. With every victory claimed, with every gaze cast upon her, the shadow of prophecy grew. It was not enough to be a warrior, nor enough to be strong. There was an expectation that her path would surpass anything a mortal could endure. Valenya had not asked for this destiny, but she knew ignoring it would be impossible. Valenya faced battles that would have made many men fall before even raising a shield. Her blade, cold as moonlight and relentless as the storm, accompanied her through every clash, against hordes of raiders who ravaged villages, creatures from the caverns that emerged from the depths of the earth, and entire armies that dared to challenge her people. Yet the greatest battles she fought were not confined to the battlefield. There was a hidden enemy that had followed her since birth, the legacy running through her veins. Valenia descended from a cursed lineage, fallen kings whose ambition and arrogance had led entire kingdoms to ruin. It was an inheritance she could not deny, for it was woven into her blood, an invisible scar that threatened to stain every triumph with the shadow of tragedy. Those who followed her saw only the invincible warrior, the woman who defied the impossible and drew crowds with her strength. Facing enemies of flesh and bone was simple. What proved difficult was fighting the certainty that the very flame that made her great could also consume her. Valenia's beauty was inseparable from her strength, and together they formed a power that few dared to face head-on. There was no fragility in her that begged for protection, but rather a presence that commanded while at the same time stirring fascination. Her sensuality was no ornament, but an extension of her brutality, a force as overwhelming as the strike of her blade. Warriors who drew near were seized by conflicting emotions: loyalty, desire, and fear, all bound together like chains. She was a woman capable of inspiring men to die for her cause, or to betray entire kingdoms just to remain in her shadow. But destiny, ever watchful, granted her no rest. The world marched toward chaos, and the ancient prophecies that named her the daughter of the storm revealed themselves as closer than ever to fulfillment. The beautiful warrior Valenia understood that her journey was not only made of victories, but of choices that could forever alter the balance between men and gods. She bore the curse of her lineage and, at the same time, the gift bestowed by prophecy. As the storm rose on the horizon, she stood firm, wielding the sword that gleamed with silver light. For in the end, it would not be the gods who dictated the fate of men, but a woman whose strength surpassed the limits of what was once thought possible, a woman before whom even the gods might fall.